Regardless of what visual art class that I'm teaching, I always consider how people learn. As we think about art history and history in general, as we explore art and art concepts, I'd like to stress that place, time, and culture influence human thought and creativity. Speaking of thought and influence, I can't stress enough how sources matter. Sources like this book. Sources matter to responsible learning. Now, what do I mean by that? How we absorb, how we process, assimilate information, all of us, we make judgments about the validity, meaning, and truthfulness of the sources of information that we absorb. Again, teaching and learning are, at their respective cores, at their centers, art forms in their own right. They are primarily concerned with the transfer of information, the exercise of knowledge, and the search for understanding and truth. This applies to a cooking class, a physics class, and to all classes in between, frankly. Art class is no exception. As a youth and as a young man, I was influenced, and my opinions were shaped largely by people with strong personalities and force of character. Indeed, most humans are drawn to stirring language and passionate convictions. This is good when it's good. Here's what I mean by that. We don't respect and honor the concept of truth when we respect only the loudest voices or the most ardent sources of information. When we use logic, deductive and inductive reasoning, and the precepts of rational thought, we're more likely to have a more well-rounded education. And this isn't just advice for young people or middle-aged people. It's advice for life. And it leads me directly to my next point. It leads me to my next idea. For our upcoming art lesson, we're talking about aesthetics. Well, what is aesthetics? Have you ever had an argument with your parents or someone you love about what is quote-unquote good music? Have you ever had that fun discussion about if you were stuck on a deserted island and you only had access magically to one source of food that would always replenish itself? Have you ever had that argument? For the rest of your life, you'd be stuck on this island, but you could only eat one thing. What would that food be? Many of us have had that fun discussion. These arguments are based on the philosophy of aesthetics. Let's say that again. Let's roll that around on our tongue. Aesthetics. Thinkers and philosophers the world over have grappled with aesthetics. Aesthetics is the philosophy of the beautiful, the ugly, and the sublime. Well, many of us have opinions about what's ugly. And when we talk about aesthetics, we're talking about judgments of experience. And the German philosopher, 1700s, that's the 18th century Common Era, Immanuel Kant, talked about aesthetics and meditated on aesthetics and had some very interesting ideas about the discipline of aesthetics in art, in science, in everyday life. After all, how do we know what a good cheeseburger is? That's an aesthetics discussion because we're talking about human experience. And human experience is subjective. It's not objective. It's not like basketball where you shoot a ball into a hoop. And we know that at a certain distance on the court, it either equates to a 2-point or a 3-point. I mean, that's an objective measurement. Now, in aesthetics, we're talking about subjective things because experience is different on a small level or more largely, depending on who you are, and who you are is shaped by your cultural background, your religious beliefs, or lack thereof, where you were born, what time you lived in. Yes, it all matters to how we make judgments about what is good and what is bad in our experience. So, I'm happy to talk to you about aesthetics as we begin this next drawing/painting lesson in our sketchbooks using different media. For drawing 1, we're going to be using colored pencil. For drawing 2, we're going to be using watercolor and acrylic. Now my kids, or my daughter and my wife, are screaming downstairs in a happy way. It's Easter. You probably picked that up. You know, I want to turn to a page in my sketchbook. I've always got this sketchbook around. It operates as my wallet. It's my my journal. I've got my credit cards and ID in here. You know, I write down ideas. I write down concepts. I'm constantly working in this thing, whether it be a sketch or my journal. And in here, I started a piece of art. And it's practice. Remember, visual arts is largely practice. Whether you're drawing just something that we see, like this bottle cap from life, or this screw and a washer, or bolt and a washer, rather, or we're doing something slightly different. And I want to share with you this. Now, this right here might not be what you think about when you think of a drawing. Let's get some more light on it. Put the light down here so you can see it a little bit better. What do you see? Well, you see this little light up here in the corner. But I mean, look at the art. What do you see? When you look at this art, I'm hoping that some of you, regardless of drawing 1 or painting 2, are thinking back to not elementary school, but introduction to art class that many of you took in 9th grade, maybe as a sophomore. Intro to art introduces you to ideas of color theory. And we know in color theory that cool colors, they bounce off, they vibrate off of warm colors. Also, we know that cool colors are referred to as recessive colors. So when we look at this, and we look at this geometric shape, this downward facing arrow that I've made, this composition, it's centralized, it's in the middle, and I put the recessive, meaning falling back away from our vision, colors of blues and indigos in the center, so that we can imagine visually as going inside of it. And then I transmit, or I shift gears, if you will, to warm colors, radiating out from that and acting as a border. And what we're going to be doing, and I'm going to be sharing with you some colored pencil techniques and some watercolor techniques, depending on the class. What I'm going to be asking you to do is to shift your mindset from drawing the natural world around you, or even drawing a narrative story from your imagination, and to think in the modernist and postmodernist style of respecting color in and of itself. It is nothing more than color. So we're going to be sticking mostly with drawing and painting shape. We're going to be avoiding form or the illusion of three-dimensionality, really sticking with the flat aspect of drawing on a two-dimensional surface, or painting, as the case may be. And we're going to be moving into design and respecting color for what it is, because as you can see, these drawings or paintings can be incredibly impressive to look upon, especially if they're large. Now we're going to be working in our sketchbook, and as we look at, notice how the light affects the color too. As we do that, I'm going to have various techniques for you to perform. But I'm going to be uploading this video to give you a sense of where we're going this week. Now remember, in terms of grades, when you're working in your sketchbook, and this goes for all of my classes, when you're working in your sketchbook, you're assessing for your participation and your participation only. I'm going to be just offering pass or fail. Did you participate? How do I know you participated? Well, you took a picture. And not only that, you uploaded the picture by clicking submit on the actual assignment tab that should be on Google Classroom in your specific Google Classroom, whether that's Drawing 1 or Painting 1. So this is the direction we're going. Even though we're dealing with relatively simple two-dimensional concepts, color is a powerful force, and we'll be discussing that more in greater detail. Well, I wanted to thank you, and I'm going to cut this short. And this is really the lecture portion of this piece. You can be looking forward to drawing and painting exercises throughout the week. So stay tuned to Making Stuff with Mr. Hoon. Happy Easter.